let's see. It is 10:02, so we will get started. So welcome, Vice Mayor Jim Shulman. We have Butch Spyridon here, who is the president and CEO of the Nashville Convention and Visitors Bureau, or Corporation, sorry. Usually, Butch, what we do is we start, I just give now kind of a rundown on the total number of cases that came in. We just got it from this morning. This has been kind of an interesting week for everybody, I know, because the mayor unveiled his four-phase approach to opening back up, and the governor announced his plan, Tennessee Pledge, yesterday. And so let me run it through the numbers real quick, and then we'll start getting to the questions. So 2,213 total confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Davidson County, 22 deaths, and apparently there was an increase of 37 cases from the day before. We have 1,171 people that have recovered. The mayor announced on Thursday a four-phase approach to opening the city back. I'm taking this away from the dog. Okay. Four-phase approach by Mayor Cooper announced on Thursday. I thought it was interesting that he was using data instead of actual dates. He set it off in phases, and we're watching the numbers in between 14 days to watch to see if there are spikes in those numbers, and we can always pull back or we can extend before we open up another phase. I thought that was actually really good.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's a thoughtful way to have a measured approach to opening, and it's really the only way we can succeed at this.
Well, so he also, so one of the questions that I think was asked at the press conference, but then we followed up, we had a call with Dr. Alex Jahangir after that. And the question was, when does phase one start? And what Dr. Alex told us was that we're in the process of getting to phase one. We're in that 14-day window right now. So what he was saying was that following the guidelines of what the mayor set out, if our numbers don't spike, if our numbers stay stable or start declining over that 14-day period, then we can start opening up and head towards phase one within the first part of May. I know we're on a different time schedule than the governor. The governor has things in the other 89 counties opening up next week at different times. But Davidson County, along with 5 other counties, were put in a different category. So again, I think the question that a lot of people had was, okay, when does phase one start? I think we're watching it right now, and we'll see.
Yeah, for better or worse, I've been in most of the press conferences meeting with health officials every day, and as much because our industry is arguably the most heavily impacted. Excuse me, my understanding was from Sunday to Monday this past week, we had a really big spike. So what I understood was we kind of would start the countdown on Monday. And for the most part, other than we had one day, which was abnormally high, the rest of the week had been pleasantly low, 25, 30, 35, in that range. So I am under the impression that the countdown started this past Monday, because we haven't seen anything to cause extra concern at this point.
Okay, and that's helpful to know, because when we talked to the doctor, he said we're in it. He didn't say exactly when we started, but it sounds like we would have started around Monday. Okay, so that's good to know. Anyway, we're watching that 14-day period. I actually thought it was kind of an interesting way to do it, because it really tries to keep people from getting out too far ahead. You encourage people to do what they're supposed to do, stay safer at home, practice social distancing, because we're all in this thing together. We want those numbers to stay down, because we do want to open back up at some point, and the faster we behave ourselves, the faster we can get to that phase one period.
Well said.
One other thing to mention, the mayor is presenting his budget to the city council on April the 28th. That's in a WebEx format that is going to be made to the council, and I assume the mayor is setting it up whichever way they want to. But I know the council members are going to be presented with the budget from the mayor and a presentation from, I believe, Kevin Crumbo, the budget director, fiscal director. That will be on Tuesday, the 28th from 3:30 to 5. And then on April the 29th, that budget gets filed. And that's going to obviously, we're going to be interested to see what the mayor says overall. Obviously, people believe there's going to be, he's already suggested it's going to be a pretty hefty property tax increase. But that kind of leads into, because we get such large amounts of revenue from tourism, that kind of leads into a discussion about why you're here. So again, we are happy that you're here, Butch Spyridon, President and CEO of the Convention and Visitors Corporation. So Butch, if you don't mind, and I know we have a lot of people watching, and so I've got a number of questions, and then questions will start popping up on the screen. Give us kind of an idea of what happened from a standpoint of our tourism, our conventions right now, before we get into, okay, so if we get to phase 1 and phase 2, where do we go? But right now, can you give us an idea of what the city impacted or got impacted because of COVID-19?
Yeah, I pulled some sheets, if you bear with me.
Sure.
Let me start with, we're aware of 20 hotels that are temporarily closed on top of the restaurants, attractions, the bars. That's 22% of the rooms in Davidson County. And right now we are selling, which actually surprises me, 5,000 rooms per night in the city. That's compared to a normal average of 26,000 rooms per night. So we're down 81%, roughly 16% occupancy versus 84. Average rate went from $183 a night to $73 a night. So that kind of tells you, what we're looking at. We're just trickling in what might be a $2 million hotel tax collection month would be more like a $200,000 tax collection. But if I've got some small print here, so bear with me. On the convention side, we've had 825 meetings canceled. Represents over 500,000 room nights and right at 400,000 people. They would have spent about $280 million in Davidson County. Most of those are March, April, May, and now a heavier June. We're seeing very little trickle out into August, September, and October. And if I had to put an overall number, if things pop back open today, we're probably looking at close to $1 billion loss in visitor spending. And obviously we know things are not going to pop back open today.
So let me ask you this. First of all, I think it's interesting that there are rooms still being booked in Nashville, because it seems so quiet everywhere. How does this work? So it kind of leads into what's happening, what we've experienced, but also how the phase-in approach works with the mayor. So it sounds like conventions got canceled, obviously, in March, April, May. Now you're seeing a little bit more into June. Are basically corporations still, and companies and conventions still hoping that they can have these things in maybe July and August? And then I guess overall, how does that work with the mayor's phase-in approach?
Great question. There are very few conventions left, I guess, big in June. I know of one in particular that's healthcare related, and it's out at Opryland. And they desperately need to and want to host their meeting. I think it's directly related to what's going on in the healthcare field. So what I've, in this case, asked Opryland, get me a complete list of all the protocols that you have in place. Then get us a list of what the organization is attempting to do. And then we would bring the health department out there and take a look at, does this work? Does it meet sanitation, safety, whatever protocols are in place? And is it possible? All that to say if the phases don't work, because we would probably be in phase 3, hopefully, knock on wood,
Yeah.
by early June. So if everything's worked in phase 3, I think we have a shot at that. If we spike, then no, it'll get ordered canceled by the city. They won't be allowed to meet. I always take the optimistic approach. Somebody's got to go first, and we got to figure out how to do this in some safe capacity. So whether that's the end of June or August or September, there is a point. Somebody's got to go, and we got to figure out the best way to do this. 50, 10, or 100 people out at Opryland, doesn't work. They can't function with a gathering of 10 people. They have a 50,000 square foot ballroom and a 300,000 square foot exhibit hall. Technology in terms of things like heat cameras or heat mags that everybody has to walk through, making sure everybody wears masks, sanitation or hand sanitizers throughout the buildings. All those things are what we're looking at. There's going to be a new normal until there's a treatment or a vaccine. And we've got to figure it out because we have to put people back to work. And I live probably in the middle, but I err on the cautious side because I want a long-term recovery. I don't want to make money 1 month and backslide. That doesn't solve any problems.
Well, so how do these, obviously these conventions were booked a long time ago. So how do they figure out, are they working with your office to go, okay, so we're booked in August, we're watching the national news, but we're also keeping an eye on Nashville. We'd like to come. We still have our room reservations going. How do they figure this out? How do they figure out when we just can't, there's no way and we just have to cancel? Yeah. And I guess the question is, besides that, have some companies just said, you know what, we're just not going to do it this year. We're just going to have to postpone. I mean, have they already postponed all the way through November and December and places and things like that?
We have some groups right now asking about getting out of December dates. They have to face the decision. If they pull the plug now, there are cancellation fees. So they have to weigh that expense versus waiting. Typically, if we get inside of 2 months and this virus is still impacting, they can get out without any real financial damage.
Okay.
The corporate side, meetings are an expense. And I think most of them are going to err very cautious and just pull the plug. Association side, these meetings are their second biggest revenue stream. So in a lot of cases, in order for them to survive as an organization, they need to figure something out. So waiting helps them. Then we're in constant communication. So we've kept our sales team in play. They're not really doing selling, but they're calling all of our booked clients to communicate what's going on here. Now we can communicate these phases to opening, how thoughtful and deliberate the city is being, and that we are following health experts and scientific data and not political data, be it red or blue. We haven't yet, but we will really start to use the fact that we're arguably the healthcare capital of the world. We have the largest private hospital operator in the world, and we have one of the leading research medical institutions in Vanderbilt. So we will start to raise the profile of that up. Research is showing us that our clients and even the leisure visitors, they want to know, is it safe? They want to know how you know it's safe. They want to know what guidelines you're following. So in addition to a pretty advantageous geographic location for us, we have a healthcare advantage that we will attempt to leverage. Okay,
and that leads to, I think, a pretty good question that I think a couple of people may have asked, and that is, obviously, this conventions, tourism, we're always in competition with other cities, whether it's, Las Vegas, New York, New Orleans, Atlanta. And we've done such an exceptional job, thanks to everybody, including yourself and the corporation. I mean, it's been so phenomenal so here we enter into this such a strange period of time. And so there's lots of questions that come from that, but one of them is, how do we as a city try to deal with other cities, other peer cities who
Solana, get down.
are they all going to, are we in touch with those cities in the sense of making sure that, or are we watching them to see when they may open and what standards they're going to use in order to kind of open back up?
We have a pretty good network of peers, and actually I am the incoming chair of our professional organization. Thanks. I'm not sure I picked the best year.
Yeah, probably not, but that's okay.
For this. So we have regular webinars. We have leadership calls. We had a board Zoom meeting yesterday. And then I have I'd say a pretty good group of trusted allies around the country: Phoenix, Atlanta, New Orleans, New York, and we talk sidebar. Obviously New York's a completely different animal. They're going to be in a world of hurt for a really long time, and international is critically important to them, and that's going to be the longest return. Atlanta is in the case where I've had great fun with their governor and him, and told him I was going to come bowling this weekend with him.
Great.
So we're all at different places, but we're all in the same boat too. So I think for the most part, our clients are going to dictate when they're ready, and the smarter cities that get this under control and have the least amount of surge are going to be the ones that recover. And as I alluded to, I think leisure will happen first. And I think the fact that we can draw from a 360-degree radius and hit some pretty heavy populations, that we have a better shot at building our leisure business sooner than those other markets. Atlanta can't go very far east. New Orleans can't market very far south. So you start to look at how that plays out. We're in a little better position, but we are all in uncharted waters, and we're trying to figure it out. But it's going to be trial by error.
Okay, so let me ask you this, particularly as you're the incoming president of this group, but and you're talking to these other cities. Can you tell us, because I think the big question here is, you've got all these different things going on, but when are people going to start feeling comfortable about coming out? One of the big questions is, even if you watch the national news this morning, even when you're looking at Georgia, there are there's one barbershop that's open, and then the salon next to it decided not to open. There's all these competing opinions. So just because you open up or you go through a different phase or whatever, doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to come out. They're still kind of reluctant. So in terms of your bigger picture, and in terms of what you're talking to with other cities, what can you tell us about when, first of all, what steps are going to be taken to make people feel like they can come? And then how do you convince people that it is safe to come? And how do you get people to come back?
Great questions. First up, on the macro level, and we subscribe to some research, and we have 2 full-time research people on staff, and I'll brag on one was just elected to the board of the National Travel and Tourism Research Association. So we're pretty deep into research, and I know most people don't think I use data or research. They think I make it up, but we do have some good intelligence behind our decision making. In the last 2 weeks, travel sentiment went from 71 to 37% of the people thinking it was going to get worse. So we're bringing the curve down there in terms of how bad is this going to get. Less than half of the people think we have a shot at getting worse. Then they have said, first thing they want to do is dine out or hang out with some friends. Travel was number 5 on the first things they would do. So that making the top 5 is encouraging, knowing that hopping in a car or a plane is not going to be first. Then they said they would drive before they would fly, and they would do domestic before they would do international, all pretty common sense things. Then they also told us it's okay to start marketing. We want to dream too, which I found interesting because we've held back. We've done some feel-good messaging videos, just telling them we're thinking about them, but we haven't said, hey, come visit. And probably we'll look at doing that in June. What they have told us is, tell us what you've done to make it safe. Tell us about your healthcare system in your city. And then they also said they trust the larger hotel chains more than the smaller because of safety protocols and the risk associated. So they obviously think a Marriott is going to be much more thoughtful than, than hotel company B that's pretty small. I don't want to call anybody out today. So we are doing that every week with that kind of data, and we're seeing it change. We're also seeing that there's not much willingness in May, June, and July. August seems to be the first month where people are thinking about traveling, and we'll get out, and then hopefully fall can hold. But it all hinges on the trend we're on. If this flattening the curve doesn't continue, then all bets are off.
So is there going to be an effort?
All bets to be off?
Yeah. So is there going to be an effort? I mean, so go back to 9/11 in New York.
Mm-hmm.
It was such a devastating time in this country, and at some point after, there was a period of time, and then New York sort of said, "We're open. Come visit," and people felt, "Hey, this was something that we should do," and people went back. New Orleans after Katrina, I know, had a harder time, but they found a way. So we're all searching through this. We've all got this data we're watching, and we're trying to figure out how to do it. Is there going to be is Nashville going to try to at some point market it and say, when it's a proper time to say, hey, we're open. We want you to come back. We're practicing proper safeguards. Come on back. The music is flowing, even though it's not right now. We know that because of the faces. But when it's time, is there going to be an effort to pull people back in and say, we're open, please come back?
Yeah, we have, as I said, stayed in touch with our clients, kept our website current. We've used the virtual concerts and the virtual entertainment to send out globally. So we aggregated all of it to just send out a Nashville message that we're here, we're thinking about you, the music's still playing, you just can't get to it yet. So that's part of our strategy to bounce back. The second piece is we already have creative in the hopper so that we're ready, and we have a media strategy. So when it's appropriate and when we think there will be a receptive audience, we will start rolling that out, and we'll be cautious, and we're going to stay in the 250-mile radius for the first couple months to just test it, and test it with markets that we know have always been good or strong for us and have loyal followings. One of the more interesting things that really came out of the tornado, but we've seen it, Nashville has a disproportionately loyal visitors. They're not just like, they don't come visit, take their pictures or post on social media and go home. They think this is a piece of their lives. The most telling part of that, I was driving home tornado relief time, and on Sports Talk, there was a rep from Community Resource, and they were talking about how generous everybody's done. And then all of a sudden they went. And we know people complain about the pedal taverns or the bachelorette parties or different, but they made a point of saying how many visitors had called, donated either checks or goods or said they were going to come visit, that they wanted to help this city. And I did a promotion with Sirius XM and saw the same thing. You know, we got $25 and $30 checks from visitors who wanted to donate or say, we're coming. So there is this love affair with Nashville that if we do this right, will serve us well and help us in our recovery. It's not your normal visitor.
Okay. All right. So now the second big question. Okay. So what do we do? What can we do? And you've mentioned some of it, particularly you're talking about the Opryland situation and, you know, the heat scans and other things like that. So I'm a visitor. I'm in another state. I'm finally, you know, feel like it's safer to come out, but I'm not quite sure. But it's like I can drive to Nashville and bring my family. What are the steps? And this probably would include not only the conventions, but just people showing up on Lower Broadway, you know, with the honky tonks, the bars, the restaurants down there, the music sites. How do we do this properly? What are the safeguards that can be applied? And I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and I think most people would probably agree. When all this first started happening, and there was all this talk about, okay, everybody needs to practice social distancing and all the other things, then we all saw pictures of people on Lower Broadway, and it looked like nobody was paying any attention to that. It was sort of like watching the people on the beach. Can't do that, you know, until we find a vaccine. You know, this thing is still around. It's not like May the 1st, it all goes away. No, it's around, and we got to be careful. What has been discussed about protecting people who come to visit our city, whether it's at a convention, and, you know, obviously if it's a convention in Music City Center, they spill out on the Lower Broadway. How do you protect these people, and how do you protect the people who work at these establishments?
Great questions, and part of the ongoing dialogue. And I think a big part of the phased opening, you know, it's a catch-22 with some counties that have no or one case and 5 restaurants. No other city has bars with capacity of 1,500. You know, no other city, and I'm talking about in Tennessee, but really outside of Vegas, no other city has a 2,800 room hotel. So we have some uniquely difficult scenarios to overcome. I think taking the temperature of all employees has got to be a requirement, and I think it is. Do we have enough of the, you know, 2 months ago or 6 weeks ago, I did not know what PPE stood for, but, you know, having enough gloves and masks for the employees, and probably when this opens up, travelers. I don't see people traveling without wearing masks by and large. Certainly there'll be some, I don't care, liberate me individuals that will get out there and put themselves in harm's way a bit. We've seen on that same research I was alluding to that people are getting much more comfortable with wearing a mask in public, much more comfortable with the idea that I may have to do that going forward. If we get to the point where people are it's normal, that's going to help us recover. But I think it's temperatures, its employees have got to be required to wear masks and gloves. There's got to be routine after every person leaves the table, that table is sanitized. The entire place is wiped down every couple of hours. Automatic door openings are going to be a much more common thing than they are today, where we don't have to touch door handles. And then I think on our part, you know, we sent out an email, it's either went out yesterday or today, we're going to bulk order some cloth masks that are reusable and washable and try to get everybody thinking, make it easier. We're not making any money on it. We got the best price we could, and then we sent it out to our members. We'll make those available to visitors as well. We will just keep pushing it out. One of my biggest fears about opening is people don't have access to those PPEs right now. It's hard to get those supplies or get them at a fair market price.
All right, so let's be, one of the things I think you're seeing during this period of time, and one of the things that's so great about Nashville and basically the country, is innovation. You know, people start innovating during a period of time like this to try to figure out how to make these things work. Has there been, let's just throw a bunch of things on the table. I mean, how do you, okay, so, you know, you've seen Broadway on a typical night where there's people packed everywhere. You got that flow of people coming out, even though there's cars down there, but there are people everywhere. I mean, has there been some discussion about, can you cordon off some of those areas so that people do come through a particular area so they do get a mask? And then if they do get a mask and people are moving around, but they're congregating, how do you kind of police that so that, I guess the best example would be, I think we're all at that point, at least I know I am, where, you know, if somebody gets within 3 feet of me, it's like, back off. No, you're going like, you're violating the principles, you know, and it's like, you need to be 6 feet away from me. It makes you uncomfortable when somebody breaches that space now. You were just talking about people who, you know, may not care, and they may show up. So how do you make all this stuff work again? So, I mean, again, I'm talking about innovative ideas. I know that, you know, restaurants 50%, you know, bars will open up, limited capacity. Obviously you want the employers and the employees to keep an eye on this, because it's in their best interest to do that so that we don't shut back down again. But how do you deal with a situation like we had, where there are so many people that just want to come downtown and you want them to be there? This is what makes Nashville part of Nashville. How do you protect all those people?
There's no easy way, honestly. Requiring the collaboration, cooperation, and enforcement, starting at the ownership level of the institutions, is critical. That's why when we see, and I get the angst and the disagreement on how much and when, but if we can all agree to let the science and the data drive what we're doing, and if they want a long-term recovery, it's in their best interest to help enforce this.
Right.
The second piece is we're going to have to rely on both the health department and the police department to have a presence if these things are required, mandated, legal to a degree versus recommended, suggested. You know, those are big differences in words, and those have been big differences in how it's played out politically on a national basis. What we saw in the very beginning of this, and I think it holds true for the majority, people want to be told what to do. I think mostly they want to be safe. Yeah, they want to enjoy their freedoms, and they should. And we want them to enjoy their freedoms. But we heard over and over again, tell us what to do. Don't suggest, tell us. And I think we've got to keep doing that, and we've got to have some teeth in the enforcing of the regulations that are established.
Well, and I think you made a good point. I think employers and or employees and all the music folks, they have to understand that this is very important, and I'm sure they do. But it's important. We don't want this thing to spread. And we certainly don't want people to come to Nashville and then all of a sudden we have some giant outbreak and people go, well, I'm not going back there. There was some giant outbreak that was caused in Nashville. I'm not comfortable going back for a while. So we obviously have to enforce this thing. Now, there's a bigger piece. Obviously, I talk about Broadway, but we have outliers all through, downtown. I mean, it expands. It's much bigger than Broadway. how do you contain that? And I guess maybe it goes back to my question. Can you, particularly on if you've got something going on a Friday and Saturday night down there, can you basically, I know we've talked about it before, just block off the traffic and you cordon off the area, and then you have more of a controlled area where you can keep a better eye on what's going on? How broad does it have to be, and can we do that?
You know, there are some thoughts and some very, very early conversations about, do we need to close blocks abroad to give more capacity so people aren't jammed on the sidewalks together? So there's some initial thought. Can you do it? Do we want to do it? Does it make sense? Does it really help? Very premature in that. And there are mixed, as you could imagine. Literally everything we think about, it's almost an equal divide. Yes, that's perfect. Give us more real estate. No, we don't want to close Broadway. So it goes back and forth. Same thing with the employees. I read a private message on Twitter that was, we've surveyed 100 of our peers and we're scared to come back to work. Don't open. And, you know, I received some unemployment and maybe a stimulus check. But if I go back to work, I lose that and I don't have any customers. So I'm worse off. And then you have an equal number of people that I got to get back to work. And which is right. Until we open, we're never going to get the customer base back. When we do open, it's going to be really slow, and those employees are not going to make the same income they made before. But you know, you have to start, and there has to be a balance, and we also have to make it safe so that those people that are scared, you know, feel comfortable coming. And then maybe we even figure out, this is way over my head, but that person that's scared to lose their income, can we ask the state to allow unemployment to continue until their income hits a certain level so they are willing to come back? Because if I'm making more money staying home and I'm safer, why would I make that leap? And I'm a able-bodied, I want to work. I know when I work, I'm going to make triple what I'm getting in unemployment and stimulus. So where is that balance? And it's every time we open a door, there are 10 more doors behind it that have riddles that we have to answer.
All right. Well, I'm glad we're opening. We have to check all those doors and check. And that's obviously very,
the good news is we are checking those doors.
Yeah, I appreciate that. All right. So the next big question, this is what I think everybody was waiting for. 4th of July. Yeah. So obviously CMA has been canceled or postponed or something. But the next, what is today? April the 25th? I've sort of lost track of what day it is, but I think that's right. All right. So the next big event, May, June, is July 4th.
Yeah.
What can you tell me? What do we know at this point?
We haven't canceled it yet. Talent has been booked. We haven't announced it. Fireworks show was ordered last summer and would be the largest show we've ever done. The intent originally was to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. So we were going pretty big. We probably will make the call in mid to late May, sometime between the 15th and the 25th. Have talked to police to some degree. I was thinking, you know, could we say you have to wear a mask in order to come down? And could that work? I don't have the answer to that. I can tell you we won't, if we do it, we won't have a family zone. We won't start at noon. We'll wait till it's cooler in the day, because obviously wearing a mask when it's 98 degrees and 99% humidity is not the best angle. We've talked about, can we shoot fireworks only, but we don't think we could control a crowd. People would still come out. So health, police logic will play into this over the next 3 weeks. I was thinking maybe more optimistically. Certainly in early March, I was like, okay, July 4th could be our coming out party, and Nashville's going to need it. I'm still clinging to some hope. And then I read how the mayor of New York came out really strong. We're doing this come hell or high water. And he got blasted in New York for it, even though it's Macy's money. And he just got blasted. We have more important things to worry about than fireworks. So I might say I'd love some feedback from people listening. Are you comfortable? Do you think if it's reasonably safe, is it worth doing? I'd love some feedback. Obviously, we know morale-wise, it would be a good thing. But safety-wise, that would decide our final answer. And the more time we can wait, the better intel we will have on that. I don't know if I answered your question. But
no, you did. So the question I was going to follow up and say, could you do it without people? You just broadcast it so people watch it from home. I think, I think your concern would be people would still try to come out. So you would have to figure out a way to block people from coming downtown or blocking them from the interstate. You'd almost have to shut the city to some extent down in terms of people trying to get down there, so that they would have to stay home and watch it from home. I also appreciate the fact that you're asking for feedback. By that time, it might be a great morale boost for the city. I mean, I think people need to do it. And I would also, probably encourage, so people are sending messages in so you could see it, and we can let you know. I mean, some people saying it's too soon, and I understand that. I would say that if you, I think we watched the data, at least from my perspective. I can't see giant mass crowds at that point, but who knows? I mean, it may be, maybe things are different at that point. But if you do it, certainly want to give a shout out, obviously 75th anniversary, but to all the frontline people, all the people.
Yeah, that changes as well. We have healthcare workers, we have, grocery store workers, truck drivers. The tone changes dramatically. I referenced the 75th. That was a year ago.
Yeah.
We were going, okay, we have an element to put into this event. I would say that on a normal year, we spend upwards and over of $500,000 on public safety. So I don't want anybody to think that safety doesn't drive our ultimate decisions across the board. The cost would go up on the safety side, and that's just an observation, not a complaint. But to anybody listening, safety, health will drive the final decision. And if I had to make the decision today, we wouldn't do it. So for people that say, hey, it's too soon, I saw one of the comments pop up. I would agree. Right now, it's too soon. But I have a different opinion, and they might have a different opinion in late May.
Well, if somebody asked, there's comments coming in. Somebody said, what data are we referring to? I think you've talked about that. The data that we're looking at is, okay, where are we in the phases? What are our health standards across the country? We keep talking about this, it's going to start getting hot. I think it's supposed to be close to 80 next weekend. There's a heat wave apparently in Los Angeles or in California that's moving this way. You watch the ramifications, and then somebody said, well, what about Miami? Miami's usually hot anyway, and there's an outbreak there. So maybe it doesn't follow the same standards or the same kind of scenarios that we're always kind of used to with the flu. Nobody knows. And so it could be that, July 4th is 95 degrees, but we have serious outbreaks, and obviously we wouldn't have people downtown. I guess being innovative, could you look at, particularly if we're watching data and we're not ready, I assume you could always push back July 4th. We just have to celebrate it on another day, or have the fireworks at some other time if we wanted to do that.
We've had a tiny conversation about that. put a deposit down on the fireworks. So they are there, and we've already paid for part of it. So yeah, we could just say, okay, we're going to save the biggest fireworks show in the history of the city for the safest day when we are fully open and everybody's comfortable. And that certainly is play, and is not a bad fallback. Whether I could find the talent, as hopefully some of them are working, but the music industry is at a standstill, just like the hospitality industry.
Yeah. Well, so
so
yeah, you got to look at the comments. I think they're very good. Councilmember Allen, I know, is on, and she sent a good comment. I mean, there are people who are watching this data, trying to figure out these phases. It's funny because, I mean, today is, again, we're at the end of April. It seems like July is so far away. But in terms of this, it's really not, because of the phased in approach. And I'm not sure how you would do it that early. But
no.
I do know that, people look forward to it. It's kind of the middle of the summer. I don't know. Maybe that's when I always throw innovation out here at this point, because I know people, are tired of being at home, but they also understand the importance of it. I know that, particularly from people who are older, 65 plus, are much more at risk in terms of being together, and you don't want to exclude people. So you're trying to figure out a way, kind of this new thing about how do you continue to do these things. And I know it may take a while to open conventions and things like that back up, but I know people look forward to July 4th. How do we do that? How do we have a celebration without putting people at risk? And that's difficult. So I know you're working on
it. And we've gone as far as having an initial conversation with, if we shot fireworks, there is technology where you could hold your phone to the sky and watch the fireworks show. So, but that's not quite the same as seeing those shells explode overhead. But we've gone that far to talking about innovation.
Okay.
And could you keep people away if you had that? And I don't think you could. So that weighs into that. We'll call it the 20% who don't care and just want to be normal with no regard to safety or risk.
So one of the questions I think that's popped in is like Dr. Jahangir, Dr. Hildreth, those folks, I assume they're all a part of this conversation as well. In terms of
we have brief conversation with Dr. Jahangir, but they both will be just talked to and asked for their direct input. I haven't gone deep yet because I want to get to May, because I might be able to make the decision by myself. No, this is just pure stupid. But if we're improving, then I'll have that conversation with them. We're with them every day.
So a couple of other questions. So this popped up a couple of times, which I thought was interesting. The show Nashville, which a lot of people obviously give credit to, helping us with our brand and so forth. People are asking, are there talks about having another Nashville show coming up? And can you even tell me that?
Funny, I could say that, and it wouldn't be a drama, but I read this question that y'all had sent yesterday. So I knew it was coming. And then out of the blue, I got a text and a call from a TV producer. And he has an idea literally to create a show that would really promote Nashville and the songwriting community. And asked me my thought, and I said, look, let's dig a little deeper. And it's something you could do virtually. So the networks are starving for content. So the idea is, could we create something right now that would be new, fresh content, put some people to work, and prop the city up for a reopening standpoint. So nothing hard right now, but timing's everything, and the irony that question and that call came on the same day got my attention. I do believe in karma. So.
All right. Well, I think we're living in a show right now. So, I mean, maybe you could just
we are in
the
our
giant
own,
reality show about Nashville.
if I can, we produced a songwriter documentary, so I'm gonna give it a plug, called "It All Begins with a Song," and it is on demand right now. So as people are looking for content at home, you have to rent it. It'll be free in a few months on some different platforms, but check out "It All Begins with a Song." If you have on demand on any platform, Xfinity, Direct, you can pay, I think it's $5.99. It's an hour and 20-minute documentary. You'll probably see people you know. It is not a travel film. It is a true documentary about the Nashville songwriter. So
Very cool.
there's my plug.
All right. Well, we have time for maybe 2 more questions, but I did want to recognize Councilmember Berkeley Allen is on the call. Councilmember John Rutherford is on the call. Our County Clerk Brenda Wynn is on the call.
Right.
And Frida Player, who is on the school board, is on the call. So we appreciate them being there.
Yes, thank you.
So let me ask you, okay, so 2 more. I mean, besides worrying about everything else, I worry a tremendous amount about the musicians, the songwriters, and the employees on Broadway and around that area. What's happening? I mean, I know that it's been tough on everybody, but I know there's been some focus on those folks. How are they doing? And I know that some of the country music singers have stepped up and been helpful.
Some of the bars have paid their bands that play on Broadway, so there's been a little bit of that. We have been raising money through our foundation, and whether it's frontline waiters, bartenders, housekeepers, if we get that info, we have been mailing $300 gift cards to individuals. So we've been trying to help in that regard. And you can donate. Music City Inc. is our foundation. You can go to our website, visit musiccity.com, and find information on that. So we appreciate any donations, and let me emphasize, there is no administrative cost. We got the banks to waive the fees on the gift cards. We're paying for the stamps, we're paying for the labor. We've made a donation ourselves. They can also go to the United Way. We have helped prop up. The United Way has a COVID relief fund that is helping individuals pay their bills, and that was the whole point of that fund. That the mayor went to United Way and said, let's set something up to provide direct relief. So we're doing that. Ironically, the mayor called me yesterday and had an idea that might be able to prop up some of the songwriters. So put a call into NSAI, and we're brainstorming some things that we think we might be able to use. Some of the federal COVID virus relief fund has to be used for direct relief, has to be spent before December. There are a lot of rules on this revenue.
Right.
Can't prop up the city, can't pay for something that was already going to be paid for. So we're looking at some ideas there. And then we're trying to figure out how to get musicians and then bands back in the clubs as fast as possible. So I know health department is looking at going door to door and physically measuring, saying, okay, you can have 3 band members here. You need to do 1 in phase 1. Hopefully we can get to 1. And then depending on the size of your stage, hire back more. It's just awful on every level. ACMs has a program called Lifting Lives that has donated about $1.4 million to musicians and songwriters. And CMA has given to Music Care. So those are United Way, Lifting Lives, and Music Cares are 3 places those folks can go to try to find relief. But there's just not enough relief out there either. Let me say that.
Well, people are liking the idea. There was also a question about immigrants. I assume they're connected in some way, obviously, to the tourism industry. Are they being helped as well? Are we making sure that as we're helping as many people and we're not leaving anybody out?
Yeah, I think through the United Way program, call out Conexion Americas first. They've done a really good job of reaching out. And Fabian Bedney has been a resource there. We've translated the COVID website into Spanish. So yeah, we're trying not to leave anybody out. It's, it goes back to every time we do something, there are 10 more doors. So there's not enough relief. There will never be enough, but we can't stop, and we have to keep doing it.
All right, last question for you. What do you think, your best guess, fall of 2020? And I know, I mean, that takes into consideration a million different things, including the fact that we could have a resurgence of this in the fall. What do you think? What do you think it looks like here?
If there is not a resurgence or a new spike or a new surge, whatever the correct word is, I think we're looking at a 50% fall compared to normal. I think we could conceivably get back to that level. But you mentioned all the events. So 9/11, 98 tornado, recession, flood. We've seen a consistent 6-month build back when we are able to get back into it. So I think it's 6 months of work once there's a bit of a green light. This one's probably a little bit longer until there's a treatment or a vaccine. But there will be a point in the side of people needing or wanting or having to force their way back to work is going to come this summer. And that's where the safety protocols and all of the precautions we can take are important, which for me starts with affordable, accessible thermometers, gloves, masks, hand sanitizer. Those things have to be in an inordinate abundance or we're going to fail.
Okay. Hey, Butch, thank you for being on here. This has been really helpful. Love the comments. Appreciate people watching and sending in your stuff. Make sure that if you're interested in making a contribution, I think we're going to post that at the end. I think we can do that to the foundation. So that's great. I do appreciate you being on. This is really important, and I appreciate your work, and I appreciate you trying to understand all the stuff that's going on. I know it's difficult.
Thank you.
But we appreciate what you do. We're going to have another one of these things next week. You talked about Conexion Americas. Juliana Espina Cano is going to be on here. I probably butchered her last name, but I call her Juliana. It makes it a lot easier. But she's going to be on here from Conexion Americas, and she's going to be talking about basically what's been going on with them and the immigrant community. So she'll be on. Again, thank you to Councilmember Allen and Councilmember Rutherford for being on, Brenda Wynn, Frida Player. I hope you all have enjoyed this. So stay tuned. We're going to keep doing this. It's really informative. And you probably heard my dog in the background. She always makes some type of noise during one of these programs. I think she knows she just wants to be recognized. All right. And I saw this as I walked in. So remember that go Preds, go Titans, everybody else. You all be safe and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Hopefully the sun will come out at some point. But enjoy the rest of the weekend and be safe. Okay, everybody have a good week. Thanks,
Thank you.
Butch.
Appreciate it.